people's experiences can be different. And I think also, as Alice has referred to, the language around it and how people perceive the process can be very, very different between different cultures, different people across various different geographies.
Hello everyone, it's Kathy here. In honour of World Menopause Month, Peppy held our biggest and best event yet. We called it Menopause, the heat is on. We had over 5,000 registrants and the event was a resounding success. The heat was very much on. So for today's episode, we have a special one. We're bringing you a recording from live on that day. The session was called Beyond Borders, How to Support Your Global Workforce Through the Menopause, and was hosted by Peppy co-founder Max Landry, who was joined by Laura Jackson, who's the EMEA Health and Wellbeing Programme Manager for Adobe, Alice Smellie, who's co-author of the book Cracking the Menopause, and Dr. Katie Tryon, who's Director of Health Strategy at Vitality. In this episode, you'll learn how a top employer is breaking down barriers to offer high-impact menopause support with global parity. We also hear from a leading healthcare provider and national journalist on the cultural nuances around menopause and how the menopause conversation has evolved globally.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here. My name's Max Landry. I'm one of the founders of Peppy. We knew as we came into today that when it comes to the topic of menopause in the workplace, the heat is certainly on. But what's been so exciting about today from the perspective I've been looking at it is the sheer scale of what's going on and the kind of cultural shift that we're witnessing. We did our first World Menopause Day event, I think 5 years ago. And I remember quite clearly trying to get as many people as possible, begging our friends to come along and attend. And I think we had 30 attendees by the end of this. Here we are a few years later. And I think the latest registrations I think we've had 5,000 people attend today. So a completely different scale of event. I think menopause in the workplace has completely gone from something that no one talks about to something that's really finally getting the attention it deserves. So I hope you're all feeling as fired up as we are about the conversations that have happened so far today. It's been fantastic to hear from celebrities, employers, employees, all about the impact of menopause is having right now in the UK. But it's now time for us to sort of zoom out a little bit, take a look at this subject from a global perspective, the challenges that exist, the opportunities, and also the cultural and societal differences that exist. Whether this is directly relevant to your role or whether this is just something you're interested in, the question of how to support globally menopause is just something that's been a big topic for a while and what we need to go through today. It's not, this trend may have started in the UK 5 years ago, but obviously going through the menopause is not something that's unique to people in the UK. It's something that affects everyone around the world. And so whilst the movement started here in the UK, it's really gone everywhere. I'm delighted today to be joined by 3 experts, and I'm actually going to let them all introduce themselves. But I'll start with you, Laura Jackson. Hello, Laura. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Max.
Please, could you give a little intro?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Max. Thank you for having me. So I'm Laura Jackson. I lead our health and wellbeing programs for Adobe in EMEA. And I've been with Adobe just over 5 years. And this has been probably one of the most exciting kind of journeys I've been on in terms of launching menopause support and the difference that it's made to our women in our workforce. So more to come on that.
Amazing. Laura, thank you very much. Next, Alice Smellie. Alice, are you here?
Hi, yes, I'm Alice Smellie. I'm co-author of Cracking the Menopause with Mariella Frostrup, a co-director of the campaign group Menopause Mandate, and a founding ally of the Women in Work Summit. So menopause is basically my life.
Thank you very much, Alice. And Katie Tryon, Dr. Katie Tryon. Hello, Katie.
Hi, Max. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, I'm Katie Tryon. I am a doctor by background, but actually have been out of frontline medicine for a number of years and working on the business side of healthcare. I am currently the Director of Strategy at Vitality, which is the health and life insurer in the UK. We also have operations in South Africa, the US, China, Singapore, Australia, South America, across Europe. So we're definitely a global organisation, but my focus today is really thinking about the UK members that we have on Vitality. We've also got a very long-standing relationship with Peppy, which we offer to all of our members to support them on their menopause journey.
Amazing. Thank you all very much. I'm genuinely delighted to have all of you here today. So thank you. I'm going to just dive straight in with a question. And the first one is to you, Katie. Menopause is something that affects everybody, but how is it different? Some people view it as a sort of affliction. Some people say it's a stage of life. Can you just give us a little basic of what is this?
Yeah, I think it's a sort of controversial topic. I think it has become quite medicalized over the years. And in some ways, that's given it some extra attention that maybe it did actually need. But I think the thing that I struggle with when I'm thinking about menopause is the fact that obviously it is a very normal stage of life for, 50% of the population to go through. And I think the challenge with thinking about it in terms of a disease or an affliction is you don't necessarily think about all the other things that someone might be going through at the time that they are also going through menopause. And I think that's the real challenge here is, it is a natural life process, but at the same time, the rest of your life is happening around that. And that might be just your normal life at home, your work, etc. But also potentially from our perspective as an insurer, your health is also, not necessarily entirely linked to your menopause, and you're going through a health journey at the same time as you are a sort of menopause journey. So I think thinking about menopause in terms of a life stage and part of a continuum of life stages that women go through, I think is a more helpful way to then be able to think about what else someone might be experiencing during that life stage, instead of thinking about it as a kind of, I suppose, unique health affliction that somebody is going through that we must help them get over, in a way we might think about other health conditions.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Katie. Just obviously at the moment in the UK, there's a kind of massive challenges in the healthcare system. Some people might describe it as a crisis, and I would actually say it's the same all over the world. But what role do you think that employers and insurers can have in basically promoting healthy lifestyles, habits, and preventative care? And how can that maybe reduce the symptoms of people's experiences in menopause?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there is this broad question around prevention. And really what I focus most of my career on is thinking through how can we get people to effectively invest in prevention and health improvement to, like you say, reduce the burden of disease kind of down the line, whether that burden comes to the public, the private, or just, for people's experience of health. So Vitality, obviously, we've heavily invested in our incentive-based behavior change program to encourage people to be healthier, be that doing physical activity, eating more healthily, stopping smoking, etc., as well as more what I would call secondary prevention elements, like doing the right screenings and managing any health conditions you have. So I think there's this big question around, how much should we be investing in prevention as opposed to cure? And we know that generally across the world, health systems are only investing about 5% of funds in prevention, with 95% going to cure, which, the balance has to shift. The challenge being obviously that investment in prevention and health improvement just takes a long time to realize the benefits. But I think this is then core to the question that we've got today, which is around thinking of menopause as part of a life journey and thinking about that end-to-end life journey, and really focusing on that conversation about health improvement and prevention through that life journey, not because you're going through menopause, but because you should be investing in that continuously through your life to help kind of downstream issues. When you look at, obviously, as people get older, the risks of things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, all of these things increase with age. You could say due to menopause, but realistically, everyone goes through menopause. So it's an age-related, life-related, transition people go through. So really thinking about investing early and often in prevention and health improvement is always going to help that process of maintaining good health into older age, be that pre-menopause, during menopause, post-menopause, and on.
Thank you. That's great. And it's definitely, as societies, we've all been guilty of that, kind of medicalizing everything, which kind of distracts from the broader things, which are essentially lifestyle healthcare, which really is what you're talking about. And we can all benefit from doing those things. You know, I probably need to be in slightly better shape myself, so I know the feeling. Alice, I'd like to bring you in now. You've recently obviously co-authored Cracking the Menopause, which perhaps you can share with us in a second. It gives an honest and, you know, I think quite entertaining insight into menopause. But what have you learned about how different cultures approach this natural life stage?
Well, it hugely comes down to both culture and to history. So the historical context of menopause is fascinating because it kind of explains why we've perceived it as being something that's slightly shameful and slightly toxic. So about 3,000 years ago, Greek philosophers such as Aristotle was saying that women were inferior to men, that we had periods because our bodies were too cold and we had to expel the heat somehow. And that sort of thing kind of created the idea that women were imperfect, and particularly through the aging process. And this continued throughout, medieval times. Older women were perceived as being so toxic that our eyes could kill children. We were full of poison. We were witches and chucked on bonfires and, ducked in ponds. And then in Victorian times, we were hysterics and we were sex maniacs. And this narrative, which, apologies, was kind of written by men for men, this narrative is changing now. And the idea of older women being shriveled up and over the hill, which has hugely affected Western perception, is now shifting. And culturally, it's really interesting that studies show the more positive your outlook about menopause and about aging, the more positive the experience. So in some cultures, language is incredibly negative, even in English, ovarian failure, things like that. And other cultures don't even have a word for menopause. And on the other side, you've got the more positive perceptions, such as in Chinese medicine. Menopause is sometimes called a second spring. It's seen as a kind of, a new beginning. And Ariana Huffington has written about the Greek respect for age, the idea that, which is ironic given Aristotle kicked the whole thing off, that, given the idea that women are genuinely revered as they become older. And I think, as we're all seeing, particularly over the last 5 years, society and politics and the workplace, and I'm particularly seeing this in sort of politics and the workplace, we're recognizing that menopause is just a biological fact experienced by 50% of the population. Some women might need support, and it's finally starting to shed that antiquated image that we've seen for so long.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously, just in terms of where people are when they're going through this, if I think back to my kind of grandmother and many people's grandparents, women were often not in the workforce. I now think of my own life. My wife is going to work as long as I work. All our friends, the men and women, are going to work equally long. So it really, that shift is a very real shift in today's world. Katie, I want to come back to you on something. So not only does the society and time we live in clearly shape the way we talk about menopause, but also ethnicity and race plays a big part in this. So can you give us some comments on maybe how people have different experiences? Can you talk about this a little?
Yeah, I think there are, I think ethnicity, race, culture, I think it all plays in. I think there are various studies out there that do show between different ethnicities and races, you get different age of onset, for example, you get different experiences. Some symptoms are more highly reported than other symptoms sort of going through. And there's me actually saying symptoms and now medicalizing it, but experiences, sorry, that's only the doctor in me saying it. So people's experiences can be different. And I think also, as Alice has referred to, the language around it and, how people perceive the process can be very, very different between different cultures, different people across various different geographies. But I think also the way in which, people sort of I don't want to say deal with it, because again, that makes it sound like something that you've got to kind of deal with, put in a box and put it away. But the way in which people manage their lives through it can be very, very different. So we talked a lot about prevention. The way in which people invest in their health, in prevention, in health improvement can be very different by different cultures. Whether there's a big culture of physical activity, whether there is what the sort of general sort of view is around eating and healthy eating and what's healthy and what's not, and those sorts of elements of kind of prevention and investing in your health and health improvement through the kind of life stages that you're going through, I think can be very, very variable by different countries. And then layer on top of that, you've got very, very different attitudes towards medication. Whether that is hormone replacement medication, whether that is alternative therapies that you see in some countries over other countries. I think you can get very, very variable management or views on management towards kind of that whole period in your life, that whole process.
Thank you, Katie. That's great. Laura, I'd like to bring you in. Now, you worked for Adobe. I think in 2022, you had something like 30,000 people. Huge numbers, of which I think roughly 35% are women. So doing some very rough calculations, 10,500 women, that's a lot. So why was it so important for you to offer menopause support globally?
Yeah, I think as part of our benefits philosophy, the parity of our benefits is key, and we offer benefits, the same benefits where we can across the globe. And there's kind of three reasons really why the parity of offering menopause support is important. So firstly, our D&I strategy, taglined Adobe for All, which centres around building a workplace that works for everyone. So we want our health and wellbeing benefits to reflect this sentiment. And we couldn't reflect this sentiment, however, without the increasingly growing support and infrastructure now more widely available in global and regional healthcare markets. And this infrastructure helps us on the journey to offer parity and access to support where possible to employees across the organisation. And secondly, we realise that our age demographic is increasing in some countries, and with that, an increase in menopausal aged females. So therefore, supporting females in our business is vital for their retention and development into senior and executive positions. We want to see that kind of that picture of females on our kind of more senior director and above more visible. So therefore, we want our female population to have the same career opportunities, no matter where they are in the organisation, and so therefore feeling that menopause offers an important element of supporting and enabling career growth. And I've had such positive response from females in the business since offering menopause support in the UK. The fact that they feel listened to and supported, and for some women it's been absolutely life-changing. Receiving that support from Peppy and then seeking further treatment further down the line has been life-changing for women that have come forward to share their story. I feel there's so much more to do in this space from a parity perspective, especially in the area of manager training. So, having managers giving them more access and awareness to supporting their females in the workplace, and potentially embracing a gender health policy that encompasses kind of more of a holistic expectation of available workplace support for specific health journeys such as menopause.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. And it's also interesting when you sort of hear about, trying to change the kind of gender balance high up in organizations. It's often struck me that, companies in the UK certainly have to publish gender pay gap reports and things like this. And actually menopause support is one of the few things I think you can actually put in there as a tangible action, as opposed to just sort of saying, yes, we want to have gender parity. What are you actually doing? This, I think, is one of the few tools that's actually a tangible thing that companies can fairly easily pull. Can I just ask briefly then, Laura, so what's been the impact so far? I mean, have there been any sort of standout things? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Stories from females that have used the service. That there was one female in our organisation who, from 2 weeks from accessing kind of clinical support through Peppy, which was great. 2 weeks later, she was on HRT via her GP, and it completely transformed her life. And she felt more herself. she could actually be more productive and focused in the workplace. Her personal life improved. So it's really, and that's why this is probably one of the most exciting benefits I think I've launched since I've been within the organisation, and the support that we have available. We've now scaled that out to France and Germany. And again, there's been some learnings around offering it to outside the UK market. I think in the UK we're very we very much had it in the media, and it's become more of a workplace conversation. Whereas in France and Germany, the taboo is still there. They don't talk about that. So it's been a bit of a learning curve for us, and it's we needed a strong business case, I think, to kind of push that forward. We took the business case to launch in other countries based on the success of the menopause support in the UK, and we've had great take up so far in terms of registrations in France and Germany. I think nearly 100 people between the modules that we have offered are registrations through of the support available. So that's really positive.
Amazing, thank you. It's interesting. So often around the world, people often think that British people are kind of uptight and won't have conversations. But interestingly enough, on this particular topic, much of the door opening has happened. In the UK, we've got a lot of questions coming through, and we'll definitely get to them shortly. But one I just want to bring up now, Laura, which I think is really interesting, and I've heard this a lot. Someone's basically said we've had a lot of mixed views about this. Some women say we want support, we need to tackle this head on, and other people are saying don't make a fuss about this. I don't want to be singled out. I don't want it to feel like we need more support than anyone else. Do you have a view on that? It's certainly something I've heard a lot.
Yeah, I think I've not heard that within our organisation. We have a strong women's network at Adobe that kind of really brought this to a point where we achieved offering menopause support more sooner rather than later than planned. We don't kind of push it on people. It's a benefit that's there that allows people to access it when they feel they need access to it in private. It's confidential. I think there's almost an element of employer duty of care, I feel, to offer that support, and they wouldn't be able to get that support elsewhere potentially. Trying to get a GP appointment is so difficult, especially in the UK, and we're seeing that now in other countries around Europe. Pressures on the state care. I think it's a balance of being able to offer something, but it's there when people want it and they can do it privately. But we've had the requests of women in our workplace wanting it. Not to say that represents all women in the workplace, but I think it's something that we had to listen to and act upon.
Thank you. It's interesting because I've obviously talked to a lot of major employers about menopause support over the last 5 years, and often the people that have been more worried about offering it actually have been women rather than men, which has been an interesting observation, perhaps chiming with what you're saying. Alice, I'd like to come back to you if I can. You've spoken a lot about information is available to women, but what role can technology play in this kind of leveling of the playing field when we're trying to raise awareness for a global workforce?
Well, and funnily enough, as we discovered, education is everything. And I've just been involved in a piece of research showing that the majority of women get menopause information from their own research and a huge amount from tech and online resources. And of course, the great thing is its versatility, its easy availability, and it's incredibly game-changing as Laura was just saying, in terms of being able to access it when you want, and in a sort of anonymous kind of situation. You don't have to make a GP appointment and go through the palaver. I think allowing women to track symptoms and take control and offering rapid and expert support is really what kind of tech's doing. And it's also offering rapid expert advice often, and all anyone wants is the answer to a quick question. And it's not just helping women, it is helping men, it's helping colleagues, it's helping line managers, and it's kind of creating a kind of global equity, or it's starting, I think, to create a global equity around the culture of menopause, and perhaps helping to dismantle some of the taboo on a global scale and iron out some of the differences in the approach. And I think equity has been a word that's been so used this year, but in menopause particularly, if we can achieve global equity, I think tech is very much the way forward.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, as you were talking then, I was thinking the number of times I've been asked as a sort of man in his 40s, why do you care about this? And it seems obvious to me that, big issues like this are everyone's problem, not just, the person that's going through it. If we spent our lives only focusing on what we're going through, nothing would ever change. But my response was often to people that would say versions of that. I'd say, well, this is something that really affected my mum quite significantly. I've got a sister, it will affect her. I've got a wife, it will affect her. I've got daughters, it will affect them. My best friend is a woman, it'll affect her. Suddenly, when you sort of start to think about problems like that, they become all of our problem. And that just feels like a much better way to address these things. Guys, I'd like to ask all three of you one final question, then I want to jump into the Q&A because we do have a lot of questions that have come through. So what you can keep this as long or as short as you want, but what's the biggest potential benefit of offering menopause support globally? And I'm going to start with you, Laura.
I think for us, it's giving a feeling to employees that we have this duty of care to our employees, and we want them to succeed. We want them to thrive in the workplace and be strong professionally and personally. I think it also allows people to feel like they're being listened to as well. So that for me is a big benefit of offering menopause support.
Thank you very much, Laura. I'll come to you now, Katie.
Sorry, slightly later on the mute button. Do you know, for me, I mean, I echo everything that Laura said, but and I think it is absolutely crucial for supporting women kind of in the workplace and going forwards. But I think for me, it's around how do we support women through the life stage that they are going through to help them to continue to invest in their health and health improvement, to improve their health in the long term and their longevity as a whole. And I feel like that for me is the key point here. It's a perfectly normal life stage to go through, but we need extra support to make sure that women stay healthy in the long term through that process and then beyond.
Thank you very much. Alice.
Well, I can only see benefits. And to be honest, I mean, in the UK alone, we know that 1 in 10 women who works during menopause will leave their job because of symptoms. And a Mayo study this year showed that menopause is costing American women $1.8 billion in lost working time per year. So to me, as well as helping support women, which is absolutely vital, it's also helping support organizations. So it seems like a complete no-brainer, really.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to just rapid fire some questions at you all. We've got about 3 minutes for questions, and then I'm going to hand over to Helena again, who's going to give the closing remarks. Okay, so firstly, how can we support our colleagues in different countries when we don't know what they are experiencing or where it is or isn't, or what is or isn't okay in their culture? Should we come to you, Laura, on that one?
Yeah, so I actually, so following on from creating a business case to expand into other territories, I actually held some focus groups with females, and it was open to males or anyone that wanted to join. I didn't specifically go out to females, but anyone that wanted to join a focus group on understanding if we could offer a menopause solution in your territory or country, what would that look like? And for France, it was once you got them talking, you couldn't stop. It was a great way to kind of hear cultural insights. I mean, some people were just there just to listen. They weren't comfortable about sharing their stories. Other females in the group were just really being, really honest, open and transparent about their journey so far and kind of what they would envision a solution to look like. Germany, very, very different story. Couldn't even get traction for a focus group. There was no one. I said the word menopause, they ran a mile. So it was very, very difficult to get any traction. But interestingly, our user numbers are higher in Germany than they are in France. So that was interesting. So I think definitely focus groups for me. I really kind of went out to the women at Adobe groups in those countries first as a starting point for me, as a platform to maybe start the conversation. So that for me was really beneficial to get that cultural insight, and so we launch it in a way that's culturally sensitive as well.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? That literally, you go to Germany, no one will even talk to you, and yet the usage there is higher. And I think that's so indicative, isn't it, of the sort of like iceberg problem. But clearly, the strong message coming through there is, like with so many things, just try and start a conversation, and you might get further than you think. We've got a question here that we get this a lot, and I'm going to answer this one myself. Because I'm a man, and it says, I work in a male-dominated company. Why should people care? Well, I can say as a man, it's partly what I said before. I think you'd be surprised, actually, if you start talking to men about this issue. Many men, perhaps most men, will have women in their lives whom they love, respect, work with, want to help. And I think you'd just be surprised at how positively men react to this. I remember when we very first started doing menopause events, and we made a very distinct choice, which was often to involve men in events, which is why I often am involved in menopause events. And there was always two groups who came to these events that were slightly surprising. We obviously had lots of women who were often menopausal age, and then there was two extra groups. One was we had a huge number of men, and we started asking them, why are they here? And they would always say, because I want to understand what my wife's going through or my colleagues are going through. So I think that's really positive. And the other group of people that always attended the events were young women who said, I want to work in an organization where I can see how they treat me in 20 years' time. And I think that was a really positive thing. I'm going to squeeze in one more question. Helena, I'm sorry, I know we're at 25 past. Let me just see. There's been so many. Let me just see which one looks here. Okay, this is a challenging one. Katie, if you can answer this in 30 seconds, I'll be amazed, but go for it. Okay, Katie, to you. A lot has been said about online resources and women being able to sort of self-start. How is that compatible with brain fog? Can you answer that in 30 seconds?
Oh my goodness. I was nervous when you said it was going to be a challenging question. I mean, I think, online resources, I always get a bit nervous of Dr. Google anyway, at the best of times. So regardless of brain fog, I think, making sure that you're getting information from trusted resources that's also going to help you actually take action. Because I think in a lot of these things, when it comes to health problems, it might be a case of, well, these are the issues and these are what this is what everyone's dealing with. And it can be very reassuring kind of sharing those experiences. But I think going to trusted resources in terms of, well, what can you do about it? How can you improve the situation? I think is key. And obviously that's what Peppy provides and other resources. And I think to be able to look through, really evaluate kind of, and get that sort of service curated for you, and get some good solid advice. I think that's going to be key. Whether you've got brain fog or not, that's going to be the answer.
Amazing. I think that was incredibly succinct. Well done. I literally would just like to say a huge thank you to my three speakers today, Laura, Alice, and Katie. You are superstars. It's been wonderful to share a stage with you.
Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next podcast.